How would you discuss that? Yeah, that's great. Role of the ruling of the Syrian bourgeoisie in the Syrian revolution.
We'll have a little trouble here, yeah. Yeah, all them boys can go to hell. There's something happening in London town. If you want to see the proof, just look around. It must be on something Thanks very much. That's a song about being in London and just digging the diversity of it all. This next one, I live in Elephant and Castle, and there's a big Latina community there, and they'd be like knocking down places like the Haygate Estate, the Elephant and Castle shopping centre. They want to knock that down too. It's the hub of the Latina community. And in just down the road we got the biggest South American festival in the whole of Europe. And this is a song about that, a celebration of the community and how it is, in our view, to be like part of that. It's called Shake It Senora.
different shapes and different types in different places around the world. This is exceptionally true, for example, when we look at the debates that happened during the Obama administration between the conservatives and the liberals. In that sense, also when we look at about the decaying infrastructure of U.S. industries, the closing down of big banks, all of these things, the bailouts, all of these things. So we're talking about a context of international crisis. Within that, it accelerated a crisis that is already developing within the Arab region, which is not disconnected from that. It's actually quite organically linked. So if we look back, compare between around 1960s and current times in the Arab world, for example, in 1960s we had what we have in that is that the nature of the Arab industry, because it was since the beginning, since the early 1900s, because the capitalist development in the Arab world did not happen as a slow transition of the local industry. It differs in different rates between one country and another, but because of capital, for the export of European capital into the Arab world. So, for example, when we talk about Syria and Lebanon, in that sense, it was the French capital being exported into Syria and Lebanon to fund the silk industry, which was needed for the French market. In that example, for example, the 90% of the silk industry in Lebanon was exported to France, but that meant only 1% of French imports. So when the French decided, for example, to move to Asia to get their silk, that meant the destruction of the silk industry in Lebanon. This is the massive. See, this is how imperial policies and capitalist policies. This is the context of the development of Lebanese capitalism, for example, and Syrian capitalism. If we take in different shapes and different contexts, within these movements, that meant that these movements became and developed more and more to be consensual with the big bourgeoisie. This is also true, for example, when we talk about the Syrian regime and the Nasserite tendencies as well as the PLO. By the 90s, the PLO became part of the problem. It actually became part of the ruling class that if any resistance against Israel or any national liberation, it has to face off Fatah and the PLO, bureaucracy and all of these things. And we see from the position, for example, PFLP, DFLP, all of these are supporting actually the regimes, which their leaders in the 60s were actually arrogant opponents against these Arab regimes who are stopping the liberation of Palestine. Hafez al-Assad took power on the blood of Palestinians by and not accepting to support the Palestinians' fights against the Jordanian army, by refusing to send the warplanes to protect the Palestinians, leading massacres against the Palestinians, and that basically was the entry point for his coup d'etat to take over power and to end their involvement in the liberation of Palestine by saying, if we get involved now, this will mean is Israeli war on Syria. But what about Arab nationalism and Arab liberation and the fight against Israel? Happening in the region cannot be dealt with unless we actually deal with all of these questions and we relieve ourselves of the assumptions that the Arab world cannot think but of national liberation. No, Arabs as well as many other people around the globe have to deal with class, have to deal with the question of equality between men and women, have to deal with the question of imperialism and all of these things. And to finally say, this is where it's not about the liberation of Palestine, this is about the defeat of imperialism. This is why going out of that territory, going out of the centrality of the question of having a central state, this should be overpassed into a question, how can we defeat imperialism? This cannot happen strictly in the Arab world, this has had to happen on an international basis. And this is where the movements in the West fighting against their own regimes and the movements in the Arab world fighting against their own regime find a link where they can actually build international solidarity towards an international movement. Thank you.